So I'm here with my friend Don. I'm so excited to be here today with Don Moxley. Yeah?
Yes, I am excited too. I like warriors, so I'm excited to be here.
So we have a lot to talk about, and we want to cover all these things within the longevity space here on the Well Power podcast. But the first thing we want to kick off and just say is, like, we're here live together at the Biohacking Congress.
Yep.
Las Vegas. So as we continue to get to meld our minds.
Opening weekend of March Madness. What a time to be in Las Vegas, right?
And everyone's sort of doing the mind meld, and we get to network. And for those of you that are listening to the podcast today and getting more acquainted with Don and myself, know that you can come to these biohacking congresses that are happening in the future. There's one upcoming in Boston, and then a one in the fall that's in Miami.
Miami, yeah. We were in Miami last year. It was great. So
a little
we're
party,
excited.
party. Well, Vegas too, right? It's like
listen, I'm not, I tell people I've moved into the third of my life. That you spend the first third of your life learning, then you spend the second third of your life in service to others, meaning raising family, working for people. My daughter moved out of our house January 2nd. So my daughter's 24. She's now coaching at the college level, and my wife and I are now in our third. We are now figuring out, okay, what do we want to do from here on out?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think partying in Vegas is more second third than third.
I think
so I tend to respect sleep, and I think I'm going to be engineering around that more than anything else.
Yeah. So. Agreed. That's so fun. So I want to like lean in a little bit just to your background, because it's pretty rich and robust history and exercise physiology and longevity and all of this. So I just want to get a little taste and share with the audience a little taste of your origin story.
So I'm trained as an exercise physiologist. I was an athlete at Ohio State back in the early 80s. I went to Ohio State with every intention of going back home in Ohio and feeding beef cattle. I have a bachelor's degree in animal science, but I walked on the wrestling team there, and I struggled with injuries, and I had to figure out what's it take to be able to wrestle. Fell in love with human physiology on the way, had a couple great mentors, and wound up changing my direction completely, finished up a master's degree in exercise physiology, and have been working in the business ever since. I've had the opportunity to teach about 26 of the last 35 years, which has been a great experience, but I've also kept a foot in the industry, so love wearable tech. I think there's a huge opportunity there. And then I've also kept a foot in elite performer kind of space. Had a chance to work with the Chicago Bulls back in the Jordan days. The Al Vermeil was the strength coach there. We had some cool tech from him, and I've just been working through. And I finished up my last 15 through 18. I was at Ohio State again with the wrestling team. We won a national title in 15. We won multiple Big Ten titles. We had we just had a great run. We had a bunch of great athletes. I had an Olympic gold medalist on my team. I had multiple national champions and All-Americans. It was a great experience.
Yeah, it's awesome. And like, this is the space too where I keep learning more and more as I work with more pro athletes, and I see it's like you can make that 5% difference is like the W versus the L on the board.
And it may be less than 5. It may be 0.5%. Yeah. When you're getting out to the end of that curve, it is minute.
Yeah.
And we found some tools along the way. When I was working in tech, as I was experiencing my journey, I worked for a company called Polar, the heart rate monitor company, and they were one of the first companies to begin to commercialize a technology called heart rate variability, measuring the time between heartbeats and understanding what is that as far as stimulus and so forth. So I got exposed, and it was a blessing. We were able to take that to my work at Ohio State, and we got to where we could predict wins and losses. I knew whether someone would make All-American the first day of the tournament. So, and as that knowledge became more relevant, we then did things where we coached recovery. Coaching in athletics is interesting. Anyone can go to the whip. Okay, anyone can bury an athlete. That's easy to do. Okay, everyone can train hard. It takes courage to know when does the training stop eliciting a positive response. So any more work is no longer valuable at that point. Stop the work, provide the recovery, let them live the fight another day. Because I see so many times, I see coaches, I see trainers, I see people just burying athletes because they think that's what they get paid to do.
Yeah.
And the athlete thinks, well, I'm supposed to work hard, and I'm all about working hard, don't get me wrong. But I'm interested in doing the work that elicits a response. not doing the work that buries you.
Like for the sake of doing the work.
Yeah, you've got to have courage. And a good coach or a good trainer has to have the courage to say, that's enough, you're there. And we can use technology to figure that out.
Yeah.
And see that. It's a very achievable, attainable point that you can measure and you can use in your programming.
Yeah. And you did that a lot in the heart rate variability space with like different training zones and where people were, because this, what I'm loving about this conversation, and I want to say this like out loud on the mic, which is just, I preach a lot in the work that I'm doing, like you're only as fit as what you can recover from. And at some point it goes from beneficial adaptation to point of diminishing returns. And I speak to this a lot, but I think you have such the chops about it's with technology and with you know, some expertise and intuition, like you can see the point where that breaking point is, where we're no longer, where you're so beyond the scope
I think it's hard
training.
to see. So technology gives you the ability to listen differently. And it's really, really hard to see.
Yeah.
Once you see it, you're way beyond where you should be. But with good technology, you can listen to the technology. You have to trust it.
Right.
Okay, you have to understand it and you have to trust it. So HRV is one thing, heart rate is another thing. So what we know is that when we take our training levels and we break them into 5 zones. So rest is the bottom of zone 1. The top of zone 5 is when I hack up a lung because I'm going so hard. It's max, yeah. And we break that into 5 zones. Well, in those 5 zones, that third zone is a very metabolic, it's a great place to train. This is what we learned from people like Chris Carmichael, who was Lance Armstrong's coach. And we actually took that technology from cycling and we applied it to wrestling. Okay, so an event that is multiple hours over multiple days, it applies to an event that's 6 minutes long. Okay, and it makes a difference. It's about recovery. And we use that technology and it works. Okay, we put it in place, we trained at that level. When you go, so zone 3, that right below zone 3 is a great place to train. You can train there all day because you get a metabolic response, but you don't get a cortisol response, the stress hormone that when you go into zone 4, you start creating lactic acid, and most people feel zone 4. When I go out for a run, I'm not running hard enough, and when I start to feel it, you're feeling lactate. When you're feeling lactate, you're creating cortisol. You're having a stress response. If you're having a stress response, recovery has to change. If I stay in zone 3, and even zone 2, when in a longevity space, zone 2 is a great place to be. There's a lot of mitosis going on there. There's a lot of mitochondrial stimulation, which in life, in longevity, not just athletics, but in longevity, mitochondria is everything.
Yeah.
You know, and so.
But this is why we see some athletes like in the triathlete space or the Ironman space, they're just actually crushing themselves from a longevity standpoint to be able to hit the PR or the win. Like, and it's not maybe forever, but I think this is what you're also talking about. Like, we can be in sport and we can be in life, but we have to know that there's different ways to train for those things.
Yes and no.
Okay, great. Tell me more.
In sport, so there's reasons to train in zone 4 and 5 in sport. Okay, if it's my wrestlers, when they're in a wrestling room training wrestling live, they're going to be zone 4 or 5. Okay, that's where the sport is competitively. The question is where do we do our homework at? Okay, it doesn't do me any good to take that wrestler off the mat and then put him on a bike or put him somewhere and then run their junk in the dirt. Okay, there's no benefit there. We're way beyond the point of diminishing returns. We're way beyond it. If you back that down to a zone 3, I can go there all day. And I'll get benefit from it all day. Zone 2 particularly, same thing. So when you're training for your sport, technically, tactically, things like that, there's reason to interval into zone 5 if I'm an elite athlete. And what's interesting, so I watched this online with social media. Social media's been really funny on that. You know, people get traction in social media because they have these circus acts that they do. You know, it's you know, stand on the ball and whip the, you know, it's crazy. And I'm like, okay, I see where that works for social media, but that does not apply to what you're doing. It may build,
Context.
yeah, it may build your account, but it's crushing your athlete. And I watched the discussion on zone training, using technology or not using technology, using feel, not using feel. Anyone who's training and thinks feel works does not understand the science of training.
Awesome.
Period. End of story. If you think that's where it is, you need to go to school. And when you do that, you're going to learn zone 3, metabolic development, cortisol development, recovery, things like that. You'll get this. The technology lets you listen to your athlete in a different mode that is incredibly valuable. So that's just from heart rate. Then you can tag heart rate variability into that. We measure heart rate variability at night typically. We use a thing called an Aura ring, or we use a strap called a BioStrap. These are good technologies that measure sleep, that measure HRV in sleep, and they give you good HRV measurements. Not all wrist-worn units have good HRV. They may say they have it, but we...
You're particular.
It's got to be accurate.
Yeah, for
so
sure. And it's a measure of recovery, really.
And we've tested them. Okay, measuring HRV through the back of your skin, we use a technology, it's called photoplasmography. Mm-hmm. So we're shooting a light into the blood vessel, and we have to see the heartbeat. And when I'm measuring it with a chest strap electronically, I get a nice steep, what's called R wave. Okay, it's very easy to measure. That R wave through the pulse is dirty. It is not a good way to, and you have to have really good technology to get that. Most people don't. Most systems don't. That's why I mentioned Aura Ring. That's why I mentioned BioStrap. They can.
Yeah.
So
both. I love them.
Love them. I think they're good companies. I think so I love them. If you're not measuring recovery and understanding that, you're leaving money on the table. There is a huge opportunity to improve. We're learning that junk miles, again, cyclists, they talk about riding junk miles. There's value in junk miles. This zone 2, zone 3 work, it's really beneficial. I mean, we're even seeing that the gut microbiota adjusts in athletes that have more junk miles than those who don't. Okay, so that same athlete that's got a ton of junk miles, that's riding the Tour de France, that's been doing that, there's a point that when they really have a demand for energy, their gut microbiota begins to provide energy. It's not just stored in the cell. So that entire system, the system is complex. We do not totally understand it yet. Anyone who says they do is kidding. But I do think that we have good tools for listening to our athletes, and if you have those tools in the hand of a good coach that trusts them and has the wherewithal to suppress their ego, to approach this athlete with caring and understanding, and know that my job is not to bury them, my job is to help them move forward, you can have a great relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what you're specifically speaking about too, I just want to reiterate this one point with that correct me if I'm wrong, that these junk miles are more like they're lower zone training. It doesn't mean put in 100 miles at zone 5, which is what's happening a lot in sport, right? The push is like
way too hard.
About like when it's going to.
And they don't get to zone 5. They get just above zone 3. They're in zone 4. They're getting no more benefit from it than they would in zone 3, but they're creating a huge cortisol response that they have to recover from.
Yeah.
They're just creating trauma.
Yeah.
They're not creating training.
Right. They'd be better meditating the whole time than riding in zone 5.
You should probably, yeah.
Cool. Okay, great. I love to have this conversation because context of sport and working with breath and working with heart rate and working with just, I think everyone's an athlete in some regard, right?
Absolutely.
So
we're all
levels,
humans. These are all human responses.
Yeah.
And just so as we started to identify HRV as a performance indicator, we taught recovery breathing in the room. So we taught 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. So we taught it in warm up, and then we taught it in cool down. And it was so cool to watch my wrestlers. They'd be in a flurry. They'd go out of bounds. I'd watch them pick their shoulders up. I love the book Presence. Have you read Presence by Amy Cootie? The Wonder Woman stance.
Cool.
Okay, so it's phenotypic response to stress.
After ice, I use the Wonder Woman.
Yes,
stance.
huge.
Before
Okay,
and
so
after.
if you coach women, you should read Presence.
Great.
Okay, it's a must read. If you have a daughter, if you have a wife, if you coach women, you need to read Presence. But get into a phenotypical response. This is parasympathetic. Okay, this is sympathetic. We want to open up. We want to get the shoulders back, and we throw in a couple quick breaths in between, coming back to the center of the mat. I gain an advantage over my opponent with that.
Yep.
So we taught that. We taught mindfulness. We taught being able to get present. We floated our team. I floated my team 140 times in one season. Floating moves the needle parasympathetically.
Yeah.
So again, from a coaching standpoint, coaches are really good at the sympathetic stimulus.
Of course, and all of those athletes are living in that like so many moments of their day. They're so out of balance.
and that athlete may come to you. The athletes don't come to you the same. Some come to you with good households. Some come to you with traumatic households.
Yeah.
Some come to you without traumatic training. Some come to you with sexual abuse and physical abuse and all the things that go with that. And it affects their ability. You have to understand this. You may not need to know what the athlete experienced, but you need to know that the athlete will recover differently based on their experience coming in. And you have to have compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then all of us as just human beings and the world of athletes and general population athletes as it goes, we are all coming off of this like heavy amount of stress load the last few years. And
Yep.
so I continue to sort of preach this like power versus sensitivity and recovery model for every human being.
Absolutely.
And for our longevity's sake, if our nervous system is riding in sympathetic mode the entire time, it's just like it's doing so much detriment. And like even my cortisol numbers, I'm a biohacking coach, and my
Yeah.
cortisol numbers are like not cute. You know?
Yeah, listen, there's a reason why alcoholics run 12 steps, okay? So a lot of us deal with that, and we had to solve it on our own. And listen, we have a lot of trauma going around in families, in humans, and the better we understand that, the better.
Yeah, amazing.
So
Cool. So let's turn the train towards longevity. I want to
Okay.
talk a little bit about that conversation, background experience, and just some of the tools that you feel like you're using, and sharing and speaking about. Including Spermidine. Why and how are these tools, working for us? And
we've known them for a long time.
Yeah.
Listen,
when you say we,
the academic community,
Exactly,
the world has known this. We know the benefit of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the application when it gets bent sometimes. Okay, someone wakes up one day, says, "I need to exercise. I need to be." First of all, their motivation is usually based on a bathroom scale. Get rid of it. Okay,
Yeah.
I believe you have to train for a purpose. Okay, now with athletics, that was really easy for us. But as you move into longevity, you got to figure out what your purpose is. I've trained amazing athletes. I've really enjoyed it. Olympic medalists multiple times. My favorite coaching job of all time was when I coached my daughter's 8th grade field hockey team. It was wonderful. I am looking forward to coaching my grandkids and my great grandkids. So my purpose, there is a lot of pressure from our environment to make bad decisions. Okay. And part of it is you have to have purpose. You have to know who you are. You have to know what this is so that you have the reason to say, I'm going to eat this, not that. I'm going to exercise, I'm not. I'm going to get to sleep, I'm not. We talked about it earlier. We're in Vegas. No, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, my room's blacked out right now. I've got it like a cave in there. And when I get my butt in bed, I'm going to sleep. Because that's my purpose. I want to live longer. I want to be healthy. I want to experience my third. And then finally, understanding managing light is so important. But those are all key elements. But I call those the 4 rocks in the jar of longevity. Mm-hmm. But the jar is purpose. Without purpose, you have no place to put those rocks. You got to figure out what it is. Why do you wake up every morning? Because if you're waking up every morning just to go to work and it's routine, you know what? You're probably heading downhill.
Yeah.
You've got to have a reason to make the hard decisions. And it's not a hard decision from the standpoint that, you're picking up rocks or something. It's a hard decision to recommend, I'm not going to stop at fast food. I'm going to prepare my meal. I'm going to make sure I have unprocessed food. I'm going to make sure and get my workout doesn't have to be, some CrossFit.
Monster.
Yeah, I don't have to CrossFit, to where I see my bra strap and sweat on the floor when I stand up. You don't need that. It can be a walk. Okay, and that can be a very longevity driven. You put a heart rate monitor on top of that, and you get some distance and some heart rate with it. It reinforces. You've got a nice scoreboard that says "good job,"
Yeah.
And that's important. So that's whether it's performance in longevity or performance in athletics, there's still a jar and there's still 4 big rocks.
Yeah.
So
I love that the piece of it is the purpose. It's the entire container for what your life means.
Have to have
it. It's critical, essential. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you define yourself? I don't, you and I just met, and the question is, how do you define yourself? I know I can tell if I walked into your home and I looked at the pictures on your wall, I know I would know who you are.
Yeah.
This came to me, I walked into a guy's house one time, and he was a big game hunter, and he had heads of animals all over, and I was like, oh, he's a hunter. That's how he defines himself. No one takes a picture of their scale and hangs it on the wall. No one does that. So training to lose weight will not redefine you. In my house, I have pictures of family. We have pictures of events that we've gone to. We have things that we've done. This is how we define ourselves. And I want those pictures to continue to evolve. And so this is the challenge. Figuring out who you are.
Yeah. And the thing I also that I just want to highlight is, like, you've talked about your daughter, and just before we started recording, we spoke briefly about how it is so different to train females, and I spend a very big part of my container is around the conversation and how our bodies and physiologically we work differently.
Sure.
And so there is a fitness variance. It may not be, some of the women I'm working with may not be pro athletes, but they're like chronic cardio crushing their souls. And so how do we figure out creating fitness variance? How do we lift some heavy things in a way that feels like slow, steady, strong, solid?
Right.
But we're not, it's like, again, with the context of living a good life, we don't do all these things to get good at them per se. We want to be biomechanically correct, but we're doing this to get good at life so we can have this container full of stuff.
So I can define myself, so I continue to build my definition. Exactly. Yeah, women are not men. Yeah. Thank God. When we take a look at this, and a good coach recognizes this. Now, most coaches do not, if you go to most coaches, they're going to hand a workout out to regardless of your gender.
I see it with personal trainers all the time.
Huge mistake.
And I'm like, half of your clientele is female. Can we just ask them what day of their cycle it is? Like, you want to know if they had a Big Mac or if they ate well or their nutrition, like, ask them, do you still have your cycle? Are you
I would start with, listen, you got to be careful what day you cycle in. You got to be careful there. But what I'll do is I'll begin to educate my client as the importance of knowing what work we should be doing when we're in a different stage of your cycle. Yeah. So as my client becomes aware of this, they will offer up, you know what, I'm early, I'm late, I'm here. Yeah. And having that relationship.
Right. Having the sensitivity for the human that's in front of you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And as a coach, it's not about barbells and dumbbells. It's about the pile of DNA that is standing in front of you and how you're working to stimulate it to get a growth response with recovery. Yeah. And knowing that hormones, most of the signals we go for when we train are hormonal signals. So if they change in someone and they don't change in another, you should be aware of that. Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank goodness you got girls.
Daughters? I have a wife and a daughter. Yeah. Right. So and they fix the both dogs. So it's I'm the only testosterone carrier around. So yeah.
Amazing. So from a longevity standpoint, when we have the container, we put 4 rocks in there.
Right.
So if we remind us what the rocks are.
Well, the first rock, most more, is movement. We as animals, we evolved to move. Our challenge is we live in aquariums now. We live in environments that are controlled. One of the things that gave Homo sapiens the ability to live past Neanderthals was our ability to adapt. Well, we've taken away our ability to adapt. We have climate control. We have flat floors. We don't climb anymore. We don't do any of those things. So we don't stimulate that part of our evolutionary DNA. You have to stimulate that. And it's typically done with movement. Listen, if you're Amish, you don't need to exercise, okay? But the rest of us have to, and you're kidding yourself if you think an hour in the gym will take care of 8 hours of sitting on your butt at work. Those two are not equivalent. They are not equivalents. So we have to move. Movement's critical. And working with someone who understands movement can be helpful in figuring this is where stand-up desks come from, and putting balls in your office. And there's lots of ways to do this. But a lot of this, too, is get a pet. When you get a pet, go out, get a pet, don't get electric fence. Yeah. So you have to walk it. Yeah. So these are kind of things so movement is critical. In the absence of movement, a lot of things go downhill. Education. You learn, when you're learning, there's a molecule that prepares the neural process. It's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It is a product of movement. Learning begins in the motor cortex. So if you're going to learn something, it begins in the motor cortex. So you need movement to drive this. Kids with phys ed are smarter than kids without phys ed. We know this. This is very clear. When we
look up school districts,
yeah, school districts. I in my past life, I did a lot of work here. It's really good. There's some great books on this. There's great research being done on this, but movement's critical. And then the next challenge, the next rock in the jar, and you can hack movement. There's ways you can do it. Sauna is a good movement hack. Mm-hmm. You can use things like blood flow restriction training, that if time is a problem, if there's great hacks to movement. You do need to put a metric on it. This is why I think heart rate monitors are so important, and they're inexpensive. You can get a heart rate monitor. You can get a transmitter for $50 that talks to your phone, and it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal tool. Spend the $50.
Yeah.
So put a metric on it so you can see your progress. So look at your phone and say, oh, I did good that day. You need a scoreboard. Everyone needs that.
Yeah.
Food, try to get rid of processed food. Try to eat real food. Whether you're vegan or carnivore, I don't care. It varies. Figure out what works for you. Just stop eating all the processed food. Try to get real food in. You need certain nutrients that have been worked out of our food system. For longevity, there is a process in longevity that's called autophagy. This is a cellular cleaning process that typically triggered with fasting. When people fast, it's calorie restriction. The cell says, hey, we don't have energy coming in. Let's go ahead and clean up the junk in our cells so we can use that for energy and to build until something comes back in. This is a huge process as it relates to longevity. So fasting is a good process, but what we now know is that there's a molecule in that fasting pathway that's called spermidine. It's a molecule in every cell of your body, men, women, plants, and animals. As you age, spermidine declines. As spermidine declines, autophagy declines, inflammation goes up. You can supplement spermidine. It raises autophagy and lowers inflammation. Inflammation is what's going to kill you. Okay, at the end of the day, inflammation is going to what's end your life. The more you fight that, the better. And with exercise and with food, with the right nutrients, you deal with that. Third thing is sleep. You have to fix your
we
sleep.
have to go back and just let people know that sperm and spermidine.
Spermidine, Spermidine.
But you know the first thing people always ask me when I talk about it is, where does it come? Is it
what
in
the
sperm?
hell is this? No, it's in every cell of your body. Spermidine was first discovered in semen. The guy that invented the microscope was a freak, because at some point in time early on, he has semen and he's looking at it through a microscope. First guy to have a microscope's looking at this, and I'm just like, okay, this guy's a freak. I don't know what he's looking for, see if his swimmers looked like him or whatever, but that's what we got from him.
Right.
If a woman had that, who knows where we would have been. It would have been so much further along. So they identified this crystalline structure in semen. It got named 200 years later. Yeah. So we have sperm in our semen. We have spermidine in our semen.
And everywhere.
We have it everywhere. Yeah, every cell of your body. Men, women, plants, and animals. But it declines. It's typically acquired from food sources. This is how we get it. And it's with agricultural processes and so forth, it's declining as we go. People who live in blue zones, if you've read the book Blue Zones, blue zones have high spermidine diets. They raise their own foods. A lot of the foods that they raise are high in spermidine, and that's one of the benefits of being in a blue zone. Cool. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about spermidine even more, but the third rock is sleep. I interrupted.
That's right. So you have to sleep. Recovery is critical. I mean, all this stuff we do without recovery, it's a downhill. Listen, when Mother Nature wants to take you out, she takes your sleep. And everything, you have to make this a priority. For a long time, we prided ourselves, hey, I can go 4 hours of sleep, I'm still going. We did work with with one of the special operations groups, and they had a group of special operators with limited sleep and one with full sleep, and they were out doing their thing, and they had to evaluate their own progress. And then they had a group of observers observing him too. The group with bad sleep evaluated as they did fine. Okay, the observer said, no, you sucked. Okay, you lose. You lose the ability to be objective. That's part of what gets lost with that. So this is the reason why it's so important to say you have to recover. Okay, now, do you need great sleep every night, 365? No, you can have a bad night's sleep. If I've got 7 or 10 good nights in a row, one bad night's not going to throw me off. If I've got 7 or 10 bad nights, one good night's not going to fix it. Yeah. So we've got to get that routine in place. And that can be done. How to fix your bedroom, getting lights out, understanding the role of light and the sleep cycles is really important. And, our aquariums are tough. If you've got a big TV in your room, you might want to reconsider that. Yeah. You might want that room to be really cold. With my wrestlers, it was funny. With my wrestlers, we'd go in and turn their room into a cave. But we were doing 24-hour HRV measurements on these, and I got to where I could tell whether my wrestlers was sleeping with their mate or not.
Oh, wow. Just because temperature in the room and changing the heartbeat and all that?
No, what happens, someone who's in the room by themselves, their HRV goes up. They go into a deep sleep faster. And if you think about this, these are 18 to 22-year-old kids. If they're in bed with their mate and their mate rustles a little bit, your subconscious is like, hey, let's get some of that.
Yeah.
So they don't get that good deep sleep.
You're like, I noticed a spike, Johnny.
Yeah, well, and here's the funny part about that. So one of my wrestlers, I'm having this conversation, and I'm saying, so your girlfriend's living with you? He says, yeah. I said, does she have her own apartment? He says, no, she lives with me. I said, do you have another bedroom in your apartment? He says, no, but I can ask her to sleep on the couch. I'm like, wait. Let's not make this worse than it needs to be. So it's dealing with the variables, right?
Yeah, of course.
They wound up, he wound up making All-American. They wound up getting married. They got a great family. It's a good, cute couple. But measuring the variables, manipulating what's going on is so important. You know what? If you're in a relationship, don't be afraid to sleep separately. Okay, it's not going to ruin your relationship. My wife and I had to figure this out. Now, one of the things we do now is we have one of those Sleep Number beds that has two separate. I have one, she has one. Temperature control, but when I move in my bed, it doesn't affect hers.
Oh, cool.
So that's how we've been able to solve sleeping together.
Yeah.
And that it's been interesting. But for a long time, we slept in different bedrooms.
Yeah.
We had to get things worked out with us, and you cannot do it without good sleep.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So
third rock, sleep.
Third rock, sleep. Fourth rock, light. I believe light is one of the emerging variables that is powerful. There's good light, there's bad light. The way there's good food, good exercise, bad exercise, there's good light, bad light. Okay.
Not good light in the casinos, FYI.
No. And one of the first things I try to do when I wake up in the morning, I want to get my eyes on the sun. I want to get my eyes on the horizon, wherever I'm at, to set that circadian rhythm. I want to do my best. I like noise in the room. I don't like sleeping in a room with no noise. And if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, we slept in tribes. There was always a little rustling going on. There's always a little bit of noise. When it gets really quiet, you're like, okay, something's wrong.
Something's up.
So I usually have a podcast or something going low level, but I don't have a TV on.
Right.
It may be the same audio, but it's no light.
Yeah.
And then you can use light as a tool. When you start looking at red light, I have to tell you, and there's a lot of people that will completely disagree with me, but I'm happy to. I use a tanning bed. I live in Ohio. I live above the 40th parallel. We know you need to get about 40 minutes of direct skin, all body direct skin contact to get full manipulation of vitamin D and things like that.
Yeah,
that means I got to be naked outside for 40 minutes, and it's cold. And you get arrested. Not that I've been arrested
Your
yet.
Your neighbors are like, "What's up?"
Yeah. No. Yeah. So I'll go use a tanning bed 9 minutes, 3 days a week. Yeah. Okay. I'm not in there for 30 minutes. I just get a shot of sun. Yeah. When my melanin's happy, I'm happy. And we also use red light therapies too. So we use the 560 to 680 wavelength. There's a lot of commercial systems out there. If you're looking at recovery, red light is a secret weapon.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it.
I'm a huge red light fan.
I freaking love them. Yeah. Awesome. And so these are all tools. These are all rocks that go in the jar.
Yeah.
And if you have purpose, when I did my talk, I talk about the fact, we live in aquariums that exert pressure, and we have to engineer our aquariums to a certain degree. The home, my wife and I just sold our home. The home we lived in, I had a 16 by 24 gym in the back. It was gorgeous. Okay, I had a sauna in my office. I had a hot tub outside our back porch. I mean, I had a 14 miles rails to trail right outside my front door. We engineered our environment for movement and for hacking this. Well, we just sold that house. We're actually moving into a 43-foot fifth wheel. We're going to find the next place we live. We don't know where it's going to be yet. But the buying decision on the fifth wheel was, can I put a sauna in it? We're taking the dinette out to put the Peloton in. Yeah. My strength is based on some rubber band programs and some kettlebells and some maces and some things like that. So I'm able to get my work in there. I'm also engineering a Concept 2 ski erg into the RV.
Cool. That's commendable. That's not easy to manufacture.
We are mindfully driving our environment for longevity.
Yeah.
I could have just gone and bought an RV and said, okay, well, we'll figure it out. No. We said movement, exercise, sauna, light, these are important to us for longevity. And we made the buying decision based on it, and we're investing in that. Putting a sauna in an RV is not cheap.
I can imagine.
But but it's critical.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
critical hack.
Yeah.
So.
And also commendable, and thank you for leading the charge on these kinds of things, because like sometimes that feels like the RV company or whoever might be like, we're an outlier. It's like, but it's the future. Like it's the future for health and well.
Well, and let's go back. I mean, how many people have to go to a gym to exercise or something like that? You know what? You've got a dining room that's got a dinette set that you use twice a freaking year. Okay. Make a decision to put a fitness center in there. Put whatever equipment in there so you can get your movement hacks in. You will live much better with that than the dinette.
Yeah.
Okay. Figure it out. Yeah. Invest in it. Make it easy to train. This is what's really important.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's pop over to Spermidine.
Okay.
Because I want to hear more about that, in the sense of how is this molecule helping us? It's in our body, and then how can we supplement it or take it exogenously, and how does that work?
So again, I'll go back and repeat. So the value of spermidine lies in its ability to upregulate autophagy. This autophagy is that internal cellular cleaning process. With low autophagy, we tend to get inflammatory response. We get inflammatory markers. We get inflammation. As we stimulate autophagy, either through fasting, exercise, heat, all those things are autophagy triggers. A key molecule in that chemical process is spermidine. As spermidine drops, autophagy drops. As spermidine increases, autophagy increases. So if you're a faster, your fasting autophagy will be better with spermidine supplemented than without. If you don't fast, your autophagy will be better than without, but you want to do both.
It's also affecting other rocks in the jar, like sleep.
Yes, absolutely. We've got some pretty cool information that's coming out that's showing that spermidine levels increase. We see an increase in deep sleep. We see an increase in HRV. So, everything's kind of correlated together. So a lot of that comes together. So thanks. Yes, that's a great piece that comes with that.
I feel like that's the undercurrent of the word on the street. People are like, oh, that's where you want more HRV variability, you want more,
Well, and one of the best parts
sleep.
is hair, skin, and nails, okay? So you see an upregulation in epithelial stem cells, so your skin gets better, your hair grows faster, your nails grow faster.
Yeah.
So let's be real, okay?
I get a lot of questions
It's about hair,
that.
skin, and nails, right?
Yeah, it's great. And product's easy to come by? Like, how do
Go to
people
our
find
website.
it?
Yeah, so there's several producers out there. We consider ourselves, the original. We're the OGs. We extract it from wheat germ, so there's no synthetic product in ours. So, and I'll warn you, there's a lot of spermidine products on the market that have synthetic spermidine in it.
Which will not function the same.
We don't know.
Okay.
You know what? There's synthetic meat or there's real meat. Which one do you want to eat? Okay, there's synthetic, there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Yeah.
I like the original. So
and there's research on that, so we know
there's
what
research
exists,
on that, and again, we're concentrating it in our process. So, and not only are you getting spermidine, it's a polyamine, so there's what's called putrescine and spermidine. You get all three of them with that. So it's whole plant extract, which we think is important.
Do people ever ask you about like gluten-free issues or not? Or does that come into the conversation?
That's a great question. No, it's a great question. So we have a very, very small amount of gluten. Now, to put this in perspective, the Celiac Association says you want to keep your gluten intake if you have celiacs below 10 to 50 milligrams a day. We have 1. Okay. So we have a lot of, but you need to be careful. Listen, my wife has celiacs, and I have held her hair back way too many times when she's gotten polluted, and it's awful. And I wouldn't put that on anybody.
Yeah.
So if you have celiacs, be careful.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of people that use it and love it.
Yeah, it's great.
So,
it's great.
Yeah.
I love this conversation with you. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. I have so many things I feel like that we've talked about that we could expound upon. But I want to ask you, just in the essence of time, I always like to close with a question, which is, if you could go back to your 12-year-old self and give a little advice around, hey, what's the best way for you to sort of live into your willpower, a long life, a happy life, what would the advice be that
12-year-old
you
boys?
would give to
Okay,
yourself?
that's
Let's just say your younger self.
That's a messed up
Maybe
right
it's
there.
your younger self.
Yeah.
Anyone who's listening to this who's like still
12-year-old boys are
figure
the
it
only
out.
time boys' hormones change, okay? Where you guys deal with it on a monthly basis, we had to deal with it once, and we tend to typically blow it up every time.
I know. When I interviewed Dave Asprey, and he was like, my prefrontal cortex wasn't even developed. Like, what are you asking me? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So as a young man,
Yeah.
like, just what would you share? Like, there's some things that you must have learned in the second part of the thirds.
Yes,
That you
yes.
would like to have known in the first part of the thirds.
Learn to control your ego. Have compassion. Listen, I was a wrestler, okay, and which is a pretty high end, sport, combat sport. Compassion can be hard to come by sometimes. Ego can be way overdriven sometimes. And as I've moved through time, particularly my 30s and 40s, I turned 60 on my next birthday.
Wow.
So I feel like I'm doing pretty good.
You're doing great.
But you will be successful when you have a team. And I was just talking to another business owner out here, and I started a high-tech personal training studio years ago. It's called Lemonade Fitness, and everything was plugged into a computer. It was really cool. I'm a coach. I see success. I see a pathway to success. In business, that's not a good thing. I need a partner that sees obstacles. I didn't see obstacles. I just saw a pathway to success, and an obstacle took me out. Multiple obstacles. So being able to work with others, be able to take those founder blinders off a little bit. There's a certain amount of, staying focused that's good, but at the same point you have to take a step back and say, okay, let's evaluate the field here a little bit and have a partner help you move through that. This has been a big learning experience for me. I wish I had had that when I started my first business.
Amazing. Really good answer as well. I feel like
thank
that's
you.
important for people to hear.
Well,
to feel
listen.
into that. Feel into that when you surround yourself with people, because we can't be all things, right?
No.
We can't. And so it's like, I always, when I do any work or collaborations, I try to find the people who are, these are my strengths. That person has strengths where I have weaknesses.
Yeah, and
So
don't be
that's
afraid to fail.
Yeah,
don't be afraid to fail.
That goes back to the what, like just checking in on your ego to say, hey, maybe I need to be curious about what that other person can bring.
That helps in business. That helps in relationships. That helps a lot of places. Again, so that testosterone male ego is a good thing to figure out to get on top of. So.
Yeah, amazing. It's been so nice to sit with you, Don. Thanks
Well,
for
thank
taking
you for the
time.
opportunity.
I know he had so many interviews today, but this was his favorite.
It was by far my favorite. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thanks for being on Wellpower and here at the Biohacking Congress. And then tomorrow we're just going to be able to hang out and
I don't think I have anything scheduled tomorrow, which is good. So I'm just kind of hanging. So I'm excited about that.
Share the knowledge. I love it. Okay, good.
Yeah, so make sure and come to Biohacking Congress in Boston and in Miami. These are great events. They have great speakers. We love being here. And if you're not here, you're missing something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wonderful.